my latest dispatch here from Bucharest, Romania. I hope you hear me well. Um, this is one of my final updates from Romania, given that, as I've said in the last episodes, I'll be moving to the Netherlands because of the situation here. And I'd like to do this episode about why I think that Romania will be a theater for war. So, as you can see all across Western media, they keep on writing that they're doing war preparations regarding a possible conflict with Russia. They're even giving some dates. So they say by the end of the decade, by 2030, there will be a conflict between the European Union and Russia, either under NATO auspices or not. Probably not, or maybe there'll be some U.S. withdrawal from NATO and some merger between NATO and the EU, which is not exactly something without precedent. If you look it up, there used to exist an institution called the Western European Union, which was a military alliance uh, encompassing the Western European Union countries, as its name says, before the expansion towards the east. So before 2004, 2007, when the European Union expanded massively towards the east. So, given the fact that Europe is rearming itself massively and the United States is pursuing a détente regarding Russia, um, probably this rearming is in light of a future conflict, as the European elites like to say. And this will probably have as a main pawn, as a main stage, as a main theater, Romania. Why do I say that? Well, first of all, geographically, if you look at how the Ukrainian conflict can extend itself, Romania is the best next victim in the European Union. So a far more likely scenario than for the war to expand in the Baltics or in Poland, for a number of reasons. First of all, geography. Second of all, the fact that Romania is such a colony, we don't even have the right to our own elections anymore. So, of course, we are being instrumentalized for that purpose. This is why we are under now the Romanian deep state has put itself under the French deep state, and it will take orders from Macron or whoever will lead France. So, given that France wants to continue the proxy war against Russia, of course, Romania is the best pawn to do it from. And thirdly, because actually it is in Russia's interest to expand its influence, and the most likely direction is towards the Balkans. For a number of reasons: Slavic brotherhood, Orthodox brotherhood, cultural proximity, the fact that the Balkan Slavs and to some extent the Greeks perceive the Russians as liberators from the 19th century. And given that Serbia has this ongoing conflict with its breakaway province of Kosovo, given that Bosnia has this internal conflict where the Srpska, the Serbian Republic making up the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, wants to pull away, which is against the let's say, which is against the constitution and against the mandate that the German head of state has. Maybe some of you don't know, but actually Bosnia has a German head of state which has veto power over any kind of legislation. So, given that there will probably be a military conflict there as well, Russia will want to get involved, and the only obstacle there is Romania. But the main reason why I think Romania will become involved in this conflict is Moldova. So I think something will be conjured up in Moldova, in the sense that there is the breakaway province of Transnistria, which is, well, it considers itself Russian. It's not even, it's not about being Russian speaking, Russian leaning, Philo-Russian. The people there, just even though the ethnic Russians are not in majority, they are in a plurality together with the ethnic Ukrainians. They form a majority, but they somehow consider themselves de facto part of the Russian Federation. This is how they see themselves, and this is what they would like to become. So there is a good chance that there will be a conflict there. either instigated by Ukraine, but most probably by Moldova, which is what they've announced to do in the last years. They've announced that they will make Transnistria rejoin them by force, and the most likely scenario is that Russia will retaliate to such a move by Chisinau, and then Romania, compelled by its history, compelled by its ties, by the fact that most Moldovans are ethnically Romanian, and compelled by the fact that the Moldovan political class is also subdued to the same masters as the Romanian one. So they all function under the auspices of the rules-based international order, which is now probably inherited by the European Union from the United States, given that the United States no longer wishes to take part in this conflict against Russia. So they will both be pawns under British, French, and European Union influence, and something will probably be cooked up there, with Moldova somehow entering into some sort of conflict with Russia over Transnistria, and Romania sending troops there to defend the Moldovan brothers, the Romanian brothers from Moldova, and so on. So this is how I envisage this conflict, Romania's entry into the conflict. It would be foolish of me to ignore the signs that such a conflict will take place, because it's announced every day. So if you read Romanian media, every day, preparations for war. Of course, it's the same in the European Union, but there maybe it has more of a token value, because most European countries are not so close to Russia, and they're not so close to the Ukrainian conflict as Romania is. So when the Dutch or when the Germans or when the French say that people should be ready for 72 hours without state help, so they should have provisions, radios, batteries, whatever, torches, to be able to survive a disaster. Of course, sure, it's important that they communicate this, but it's different when it is communicated in a frontline country like Romania. So in this regard, I think there's a stronger chance that out of all the countries in the European Union, Romania will be faced with such a conflict in the near future. And given the fact that it has already been vassalized to the extent that that free elections are no longer permitted, probably this is the Ukrainian scenario being played out in Moldova and in Romania. Moldova is a bit ahead. They've banned basically any kind of Russian-oriented media. The only Russian language media permitted is the Russian version of Radio Free Europe in Moldova. So it is only the American organizations broadcasting in Russian which are allowed. And pro-Russian parties kept on being banned. Their leaders kept on being arrested. So Moldova is definitely going on the path of Ukraine, the Ukraine after Maidan. And Romania is following suit with cancelling of elections, with the leader of the winner of the elections being arrested and not being allowed to run again, and so on. So I see the Ukrainian scenario unfolding here as well. There are several other elements that are copied from the Ukrainian playbook. So the so-called civil society, which was put together by Soros after 1990, is now an instrument of intimidation towards dissidents. Even though they were claiming their legitimacy from dissidents under communism, now they are the ones persecuting dissent. So some of their members are now on the board of several censorship organizations like the National Audiovisual Center, which now has as prerogative as they believe to have, and they enforce the right to take down any kind of material on the internet. So, and they actually abuse this against mainstream journalists, even, not to mention on the regular people. And also there are organizations like, for example, the most prestigious civil society prize, the prize of the Center for Social Dialogue, another Soros-backed organization from the 1990s. This prize went to the Romanian version of the Azov battalion 2 years ago. So there's this group which threatens basically to kill people, to kill Putinists, and to commit terrorist attacks here in Romania. And they do this out in the open, and the authorities do nothing against them. They received their leader, the guy, well, he's a politician, the guy that set up this organization, the civil wing, let's say. The military wing was set up by somebody else, but the civil wing, the civilian wing, he got prize for dialogue, the national prize for dialogue. So this is the situation in Romania, and moving forward, I bet in the next years, as this pro-war discourse, pro-war mainstream discourse is becoming normalized, there'll be more and more intimidation, just like in the Ukrainian post-Maidan scenario, and maybe even worse. Maybe they'll even resort to killing, just like they did in Ukraine with people on that list, on Mirotvorets, pro-Russian intellectuals. So yeah, if they want a war, I'm sure they'll be able to manufacture consent for one. All these instruments are known for decades. They've been applied everywhere. If it worked in Ukraine, the Ukrainians being brotherly, Slavic, Orthodox, East Slavic peoples, brotherly towards the Russians, and if that was engineered across 3 decades in Ukraine, you can imagine it will be definitely possible to do this in a rather Russophobic country like Romania, a culture that is not Slavic. Romanians are strong xenophiles. They really love foreigners, especially Westerners. So this will be way easier to manufacture here in Romania, rather than it was in Ukraine. So this is why I think Romania is the next geopolitical victim of this clash between civilizations that is now unfolding in Eastern Europe. Romanians are very gullible to this kind of propaganda, because throughout the last 30 years, the media and also the mainstream historical discourse has presented a very Russophobic view upon about the history of the last few centuries. So everything that was favorable to the Russian position, let's say Dimitrie Cantemir, the first constitution, Pavel Kiselev, the War of Independence, the First World War, and the battles of Maraj-Marash and Stoituz. The Russian component has been extracted from all of these things, and also the Romanian, let's say, guilt towards the Russians in the Second World War has also been completely taken out of the picture. So it is now fashionable to say that my grandfather or my great-grandfather died in in Stalingrad, and this is why I hate Russians. Yeah, but why? What exactly did your great-grandfather do in Stalingrad? Because that's a bit far away. You know, that's like on the Volga, on the edge of the European continent. So yeah, this is not exactly discussed from this angle. So given that this type of Russophobia has been injected in Russian society in the last decades, and you have all of these generations which know nothing but the American point of view, it will be quite easy, I think, to manufacture consent for a future war with Russia. And this is the reason why I'm also leaving the country. It is also harder and harder to be able to talk to people. So being a sovereigntist, having this patriotic position, is now being discredited in the mainstream discourse. It is akin to being a traitor, according to the influencers and to the journalists that make up most of the mainstream public opinion. So yeah, the atmosphere here is becoming more and more unpleasant, let's say. And given the war, given the fact that the war is looming on the horizon, probably this will actually get worse. So this is why I'm leaving ahead of time, and I'd like to see the developments from abroad, from a safer corner of Europe. Of course, if there's going to be a war between the European Union and Russia, all of Europe will be at war. But just like in Ukraine, it's one thing to live in Lugansk, which would be the Romanian position now with respect to Russia, or another thing to live in Uzhgorod on the other side of the country. So I think that moving to the Netherlands will actually spare me of the biggest consequences of the war. But let's see. So this is what I wanted to tell you. One of my last dispatches from Bucharest, Romania. Summer is coming, and this summer I'm moving to the Netherlands. So see you soon. Bye.